Iowa's News Now Sports brings you black and gold glory. Your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
Just told Gary and Ed, we pulled out the pass rush drill on Wednesday. I've been forgetting to do that or suggest that, and so we did it Wednesday. It seemed to work. I'm joking. But no, it was a good effort by all the guys.
LOL, Kirk. LOL. Welcome to Eye on the Hawks, our Sunday live edition. Post Purdue, a 20-14 win for the Hawkeyes over the Boilermakers, going to 5-1 on the season. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here, breaking everything down. We will start with the pass rush play. It was a nice time to finally call that, I suppose. As you heard Kirk joking after the game there, 6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. Just huge performance by the defense, one that a lot of people have been waiting for, clamoring for a little more on the stat sheet. Maybe we've seen the pressure coming from the front seven for the Hawkeyes, just hadn't gotten to the quarterback. They did so and then some on Saturday against the Boilermakers, and the boys afterwards talked about maybe circling the wagons a little bit ahead of the game to maybe put a little more emphasis on keeping it loose and fun out there before the game against Purdue.
We kind of got together as a unit, like a player-led little meeting on Thursday, and just said how important it was just to play for each other out there and have some fun.
Who called the meeting?
That was just kind of a meeting between, it was really like me, Logan Lee, all the guys. We kind of knew that we needed to have a meeting, so we meet together as a unit on Thursdays, and then it may have been Friday that we went in the team room and just kind of had a nice talk.
What was the message? What was said?
Just play for each other. A lot of us, we don't like, we stay off our phones with the media and stuff, but it's hard not to see sometimes, people on social media, criticizing us for not getting to the quarterback and not being productive. But at the end of the day, it's us in that room, and just play for each other. And then, like I said, one of these games will happen for us.
We held a defensive line unit meeting on Friday before we left for the hotel, and we were just talking about how we've just been playing like super stuck up and tight and super stressed about just messing up our jobs. And we just said we're gonna go out there and have fun and play together as a unit, and we're just gonna have fun the whole game. And we did that. I think I can speak for everybody on the D-line, say that we had more fun this game than we have any of the other ones.
6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss will certainly make things a little more fun. Aaron Graves there with the podium game, first career sack for him. Now listen, I think the narrative of, the boys came together and just, had that kind of cinematic moment of like, guys, we need to have fun out there and go chase what Iowa football is all about. I think that's a wonderful narrative, and it's a cool little story. I also think it helps the fact, and you guys were there, I was watching on TV for yesterday, Hudson Card, who's a darn good quarterback, we talked about that. He, compared to Noah Kim with MSU, is not a guy who's going to tuck and run. He's mobile in the pocket. Noah Kim will go find his yards in the running game. Hudson Card will stay behind that line of scrimmage and look for opportunities to the point of detriment in some cases there.
Throwing behind the head hat passes,
it's kind of wild
behind
too,
the back.
Credit where credit's due. I mean, he hangs in there. You don't get to be second in the Big Ten in passing yards coming in the game without hanging in the pocket and looking for stuff.
Yeah.
I think that also led to maybe more opportunities for sacks and TFLs, because he was standing back there just looking for anything downfield and, would even just run straight along the line of scrimmage. I'm not saying that the pep talk didn't help, but I think there were some opportunities in what Purdue was trying to do offensively anyways.
Certainly. I wouldn't necessarily even credit all the tackles for loss to that. I mean,
sure,
those
that's
were
different.
just, handoffs that, they really just got in the backfield. I mean, certainly this year I have not seen a quarterback quite as miserable as Hudson Card was yesterday.
Kudos to him for finishing. I told Mike there was
that game was a nightmare for him.
They had a shot halfway through the second quarter where you could almost hear the Curb You enthusiasm. I worried about him, borderline worried about him. He came and it sounded like had some sort of chest discomfort or was playing a little banged up already. But boy, I mean, he looked rough. But man, he hung in, made some throws, and kept him in it. But boy, he felt the full wrath of the Iowa defense. That's for sure.
That is an Iowa defense with a chest full of anger and ill intent to their enemy. Because
said it with their chest.
Can we take credit for that? Because he's like, we saw on social media people were saying they weren't getting to the credit or getting to the quarterback, and if we're first taking right
who's standing back there looking for those plays, not running it like Kim does, and then he gets sacked half a dozen times. So
Yeah.
certainly opportunities there.
That was just, again, you have to think that player meeting maybe made some sort of a difference. Again, maybe we're making too much out of it, and this is just a one-week anomaly, but they all certainly went into that press room and talked about that player-led meeting.
brought up multiple times without
Without prompting. Kirk didn't even know about it until we brought it up, I don't think, right?
Kirk said something funny. He goes, they should meet every week, and then he goes like, I don't know. Usually, players only meetings are for bad teams, and I was 5-1. So
Yeah, it's true.
There was, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but there's some analysis of teams, and I think it goes beyond sports and just sort of groups in any walk of life, of bad teams are led by no one, good teams are led by coaches, great teams are led by players. And so maybe that's an encouraging sign that the fact that we know what we need to do for ourselves, even whatever measure of impact it may have had, the fact that a very veteran group on that front seven said, hey, listen, let's take a minute and just, circle the wagons. Buffalo Bills, Iowa Hawkeyes. Nobody circles the wagons like that.
Kirk even said, he was like, hey, I think Joe needs to have a player-led meeting every week. Why don't we just do that?
Joe has been, again, we've talked about it a few times, just a real delight to talk to. A guy who definitely keeps it fun for sure, but also you can tell he's got the respect of everybody in that room. Another guy who continues to build respect and has had it for a while, and we're just finally now getting to see the dividends of that. Jay Higgins, what another fantastic game for the senior out of Indianapolis. Knows a lot of those Purdue guys, has been friends with Tyrone Tracy for a long time. Had a big day as well, 12 tackles. His first career interception was a fun moment for him. Nick Jackson was at the podium talking about another big game for his fellow linebacker.
Jay finally got that pick. What was his reaction?
It's Jay Higgins. At this point, are you surprised with anything that he does? He's just he's a football player. It goes back to his preparation. He's up late night watching film. He's up early in the morning watching film. So he's going to be in the right spot every time. So it's Jay Higgins. So I'm proud of him. I'm excited for him. And he got it done.
I think we're getting to the Jay Higgins. I love afterwards when he gets up. I don't know if he was trying to moonwalk or trying to a little backwards. I don't know if that's a stumble or if that's a swagger, but such a cool play. We are starting to get into the situation, and what a situation it is. Jay Higgins might not be just the best player on this defense, or arguably the best player. He's having an All-American caliber season. He really is. Beyond numbers, you just watch the guy. He's everywhere.
Yeah, he's a guy who, I think a couple weeks ago I crunched the numbers about if he was averaging at that point 10.4 tackles a game, and if he kept on that pace, he would get third or fourth for single season records in Iowa history for total tackles. But he's had, I think, 12 tackles the last 2 games, so he's bumping that average up.
Wild.
He's going to reach a consistent record that's been around since. Probably not going to break the record. The single-season record for Iowa has held since 1972 or something like that. It's unbelievable. But he can get top 3, which is saying something for a defensive unit that always has incredible guys out there. I think Chad Greenway and Abdul Hodge are number 2 and 3 on that list in the same season.
Yeah, boy,
that was. Is he just anyway. Even after Jack, we bring it up almost everyone brings it up that Jack Campbell leaves, and Jay Higgins, a guy who's just waited his turn, is just out there every day. Every game, and when we get the stat sheet, in the post game, in the press room, his name's always at the top of the tackle list, almost every
sack numbers that people were hoping for. But we've talked about that a few weeks now too. Is that Joe is just back there every single, and there's a handful of guys like that. Shame on us. You can see them in the backfield nonstop if you're watching this stream on YouTube live. If you're listening to the audio version, be sure to go to the Iowa's News Now YouTube page. We've always got game highlights. Owen had you shoot great every game, but you had a fantastic game getting to come in today and going through that. We'll see one of your savvy veteran moves we'll talk about in a little bit as we get deeper into this. But if you want to see the video highlights, those are on the Iowa's News Now YouTube page if you're only listening to this in the audio version. So defense looks awesome. Super great. The offense in Deacon Hill's first start, well, some shakiness. 6 for 21, 110 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Numbers kind of speak for themselves. Deacon speaking for himself literally and figuratively after the game. Yeah, some QB1 first start jitters for the Badger turned Hawkeye.
I think it was pretty shaky, especially in the first half. But I'm going to learn a lot from it. It was a great opportunity to proceed and grow as a player and as a person. I think it was, we got the win, fortunately, and so I think there's a lot of room for growth. But I thought I grew a lot as well. I think first half I was a little jittery, but I think when we came back in the second half, I did a great job of trying to be a calm presence for the team, not getting too rattled, the O-line always apologizes if you get hit, but I told them I don't mind. Just, keep doing what you're doing. I trust you guys 100%.
Yeah, Deke, I'm surprised you said that he was jittery earlier because he didn't show it a bit and like his demeanor-wise, but he's just really a calm guy. He never seems too high or too low. He's always just someone you can, rely on when it comes to bringing the team together and, calming us down and stuff like that. So, it wasn't really a surprise. Obviously, some balls could have been better, but that's with every quarterback. And, he's getting better, day by day. And, really not a doubt with Deacon with me.
Well, you guys saw him throwing. And I'm certainly not an expert on quarterback play, but from throwing baseballs, I know this. If you press or if you try to, do too much, sometimes the ball sails, and I'm guessing that's probably what it was. But I thought he, kept his composure, and then a couple of them we didn't help him on again. Where catch, got to make the makeable plays, and we didn't always do a great job of that. But he hung in there, kept doing a good job, and that last one he threw down our right side and it looked pretty good to me.
Yeah, a couple more drops there. The interception was a ball to Seth Anderson that really just went through Seth's hands. It was a tough one, and then it takes a weird hop. Reminded me of Nate Stanley to Amir Smith-Marset against Minnesota in 2017. It was a similar one down that same sideline. And it goes off Amir's hands and just drops right into Minnesota safety's hands. Very comparable. Just a ball you got to catch, and it takes a weird carom and becomes an interception.
If I may have a side tangent before we go on to
side tangent away.
There needs to be a different statistic for interceptions like that. Because
Tipped
it's
interceptions for sure. Yeah,
because it's like Deacon did nothing wrong there. I thought it was a good pass. It hit
very good pass.
Hit Seth, and he should have caught it. He should not be credited with an interception there. There either needs to be like a different statistic that they literally like make up 4 plays like that could be ruled kind of like how you do hits and errors in baseball, where it's like a judgment call, like, oh, the receiver should have had that, or like just rule it a fumble instead or something.
They have an advanced stat. They have the, I think, interceptable pass.
Oh, really?
I think it's behind a paywall on like Pro Football or whatever. But I think, in that sense, though, he did throw one that probably should have been picked by the goal line when I was rewatching the highlights. Mm-hmm. So I guess interceptable passes, take that one away.
Yeah.
Take the one that the guy dropped.
Yeah.
Well, it was a hard thrown ball, and it would have been a tough play to make.
There is, and shame on me again for not knowing the exact terminology of it, but there's, I think, like a perceived completion percentage or something like that. It factors in drops and balls that are there. I think, listen, there's only so much lipstick you can put on 15 incompletions out of 21 attempts.
You weren't about to call Deacon Hill a pig, were you?
No, absolutely not. I would not
I
do
didn't
such
think
a
so.
thing. I like this kid too much. But you see the first half numbers there. There were drops. The glass half full view on this is that there was a pass batted down at the line. There was a 3rd and goal after Cooper's interception where Le'Shawn goes out on a wheel and he doesn't see him and he goes down the middle. I think he was going to Stylianos, and a Purdue defender was right there and dropped what could have been an interception in the end zone. Probably good that he throws the ball that hard in that situation. Mm-hmm. A lot of these passes, though, were only high overthrow where nobody else was going to be able to get them. They weren't in danger, so to speak. They were just a little high and wide.
I definitely,
that one to Nico. He's leading him, and it's a step or two ahead of him, but it's not in any danger. And I think there's another one here. I think this one's to Deontay. That's just skies on him. So that's the good news.
He wasn't long, but 29%. That definitely needs to improve if they're going to win next week.
But that one, that's the one to Seth. Seth has to catch that ball.
Yeah. It's, some of those I guess you're right. An overthrow is better than an underthrow because it's not getting intercepted. But boy,
it's tough. 3 of 14 is tough. But this is where it doesn't forgive everything, and not that it's forgiveness or whatever. There's no guilt here. Mm-hmm. But 3rd and 2, when Brian Ferentz dials up a play, says, "Hey, we're going to trust you with a throw," and he throws a dime like that. that alleviates, I think, some concerns of like, okay, when the chips are down, numbers don't tell the whole story, but there's a lot of chapters in there. That's for sure.
That's a heck of a story. Yeah, and I was encouraged. Like, boy, we talk about how much we really like Deacon as a person. He's a fun guy to talk to. And again, in the post-game presser, you could tell he was a little disappointed with his performance. But he seems like a guy that can shake it off. And Eric all even said there, yeah, he was like, I couldn't even tell that he was shaky based on his demeanor out there. Like, I think he maybe just had those jitters where it's his first game as a college quarterback, and he's going to come out and he's going to airmail some passes, and hopefully, move on to the next one, because that Wisconsin game next week is going to have some major storylines with it.
Sure.
Homecoming game for him.
Really appreciate, too, the honesty, because a lot of quarterbacks wouldn't come out and just say, hey, I had some jitters.
Yeah.
Hey, I had some jitters, but, I was a little nervous, first start, blah, blah. A lot of people would just be like, we need to get better, to talk like that, like coach speak and stuff.
Sure.
So
I think there's probably the narrative of guys that don't get too high or too low are kind of mundane. There's a better word than mundane, but they're a little more even keel. Whereas Deacon, we've said that from the beginning, that he's got a little more personality and a little more open. And so, yeah, I think he still has that even keel mentality and approach, but he's still himself, and he's a little more affable than you would normally see with an attitude like that, where you're not shaken up by a ton of things. I think he's open and honest about it, which is great. And now, go ahead.
I was just going to fish. I don't think it's in the, no, we're going to talk about it a little bit, so carry on.
We've got the.
I just had to check the rundown here, but yeah,
sure.
we will. Yeah, we'll get there.
So I don't know what you guys saw, or if you guys thought about this at all. I at never at any point watching this game thought, boy, I wonder if they're going to put Joe in and see what Joe Labus can do. That thought never crossed my mind. It did apparently for some people, and Kirk was asked about that after the game.
Was there any thought to go to Joe and...
For what? Joe and Labus?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, during the game?
Yeah.
No, the answer is no. No, Deacon's our quarterback right now. Yeah. And that's no offense to Joe, but I mean, that'd be kind of silly. Make a change.
That is the 2023 edition of What's the Upside. Again, and listen, I was in a really good position in terms of just what they have, all things considered, with quarterback, that you've got a guy in Joe Labus who spent all bowl prep as the one and started a bowl game and won a game against a good Kentucky team, while not having to do a ton of stuff there. But he's also been out for a long time. And at what point in Kirk Ferentz's 25 years has he been a guy to like, well, they had a bad 30 minutes, yoink. It never crossed my mind. I'm sure I think in a day and age where you see other teams work very quickly, sometime, whether it's wholesale changes on offense, pulling dude if he has a few bad drives and trying to mix things up. You guys were there watching it. Did you ever get a sense from anybody else or yourselves that was a thing on the table?
I personally never even had that thought. It's funny because when they asked that after the game, I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about Joe a single time. I mean, yeah, for your first start to like have an idea that you get pulled, yeah, no way. I mean, I think I'd be under the impression that if he struggles against Wisconsin and then he's struggling against Minnesota, maybe you consider it, but still, you got to give this guy a little bit more of a leash. Mike?
Better unmute myself. I'm in your boat, Owen. I did not. The only time I thought about Joe Labus when I was getting a warm-up video, just in case something happened, But looking back at the stats, when you go into halftime, and I forget what the halftime score was. Let me pull up.
10-7, wasn't it?
Yeah, 10-7.
Because TJ Sheffield scored that.
Purdue had just scored, and you look at the first half, Mitch, you brought up the first half stats, 3 for 14, 28 yards a pick. Those, to me, without watching the game, are benchable numbers. But Iowa was not... besides that late touchdown, it did not seem like the game was Purdue was, gonna. Well, it was a 3-point game.
They were the late touchdown raised the eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, and Iowa's defense out there for a lot of plays. I think they were on the field for 41 plays in the first half. So with that and a late score, I'm like, the formula. Not again. Iowa with a 10-0 lead. It goes back to that stat they flashed during the Iowa State game, where I think Iowa's now 67-2 since 2015 when leading by 8 points. I mean, when they're up by that amount of that score and that margin, they don't blow those leads. But that late touchdown had the thought creep in of like, boy, that's not a good one. And with the way the defense has been out there,
it's possible that we never thought about Joe just because again we've kind of we've grown accustomed to the quarterback numbers that we see at Iowa over the last few years, and so like if this was Bama and somebody puts up those kind of numbers, then you might bench that kid at halftime. But like at Iowa, we have not seen terribly impressive numbers from the quarterback spot over the last few seasons. So we're like, let him play. Let's see how it goes.
I think if he's 3 of 14 for 28 yards and like 3 picks or 4 picks,
and the pick was his, and the picks were his fault, not like.
But even then, I'd go back to Stanzi, 2009 against Indiana, throws 4 picks in 1 quarter. Granted, that was a day, I don't know if you remember that back in 09, where the wind is whipping, and I mean, you couldn't throw a ball 10 yards without it being caught up in the air. And he threw one deep to DJK that was meant to be a 40-yard ball and stopped at like 25 and just kind of dropped down.
That's a little different than because when Rick threw a Rick 6, the Hawks were going to win.
Again, that's
a little weird that year.
I loved in our interview a couple weeks ago, he made some crack about like, yeah, I know it's tough to come back from a pick 6. Like, he threw 4 of them in 09 and things went well for the Hawkeyes. 6 completions for Deacon Hill against the Boilermakers, 5 of them to Eric All, who had quite the day, his best day as a Hawkeye, one of his best days as a collegiate player. Of course, had the 22-yard touchdown grab, too, that ended up being one of the deciding plays in this game. Big day for him, so it was great to see, again, just a picture-perfect ball from Deacon. Not just a great ball for him to catch. I think both of his touchdowns, well, he had a short one from Cade in the first game against Utah State. Then he had the screen last week against Michigan State. That's his first one where he's got to be a little bit of a true receiver. And then this was a great throw, too, to set up. And that's what Eric All can do, folks. That's why it's so tantalizing to have him in this offense now, particularly with Luke Lachey out. And then, boy, he can kind of catch the ball wherever. It's fun having a guy like that who to open up holes for Shannon and Kaleb, and we'll get to Kaleb here in a little bit. Where, boy, he doesn't look like the most physically imposing blocking tight end, like maybe like prototypical look you might think, but man, he knocks dudes.
Over the first 3 games, I mean, with Lachey in there, you're like, all right, Eric's going to be a nice like safety net. Sure. Cade's got a relationship with him, so he'll be a good second, number 2 tight end. But like, dude, this dude is like a first-round draft pick now. Like, he's incredible.
He looks like an NFL receiver or NFL tight end. Yeah, I agree.
5 catches, 97 yards. When you've got a guy who's averaging almost 20 yards a pop on a reception, and he's a tight end, again, that quintessential tight end to you folks. Yeah, the grad program alive and well as well. But of course, the day belonged to number 2. Great to see Kaleb Johnson in the backfield. 17 carries, 134 yards, and that 67-yard touchdown on, I believe it was his 2nd touch of the day. Talk about announcing your presence with authority. Caleb's got some history with some of these Purdue players. Of course, had a great game in West Lafayette last year. He spoke about that relationship and maybe some of the dialogue between 2022 and 2023 after the game.
It's just like, I feel like against them, it's just personal to me because I got a lot of people that I know on that team. So it's just like we a lot of just stuff talking to each other on the phone before the game. So it's just that's what it is basically. So
stuff talking. I'll let you
cleaning it up.
Figure that out. Yeah. Boy, let's talk about a veteran move on the camera work by Owen Sebring here. This is a fantastic shot. Right there, you got
it. Sometimes you're just in the right spot at the right time.
But folks,
came right at
but other times you know what you're going to do. So it maybe got cut out there. Are we having some video playback? Maybe some issues here, Mike? It's a little choppy. We'll see if we get it here. But so here's, as we gloss over just a great run, watch the camera lens and what it does here.
Oh, no, this is your YouTube video. The videos that
this is the YouTube.
I downloaded too high a quality, so they're
oh yeah, that was like a gig that I sent off for Kaleb. Sorry you had a big game, Kaleb. My bad. Owen switched a filter like on the fly on the camera, which is basically like changing a quick camera setting to get this awesome moment right before he goes and blows a kiss to the crowd.
Yeah.
It was a savvy veteran move. I was going to give you some depth for that.
I mean, our cameras are so great because they have such powerful zooms on them that I can see, I can stand in the end zone and see something happen on the other 20-yard line. So that's why it's great. You can see him coming all the way at me. But, when you're on the powerful zoom, a guy who's right next to the camera, you're going to be just seeing his eyeball rather than his whole face. And so just got to back that baby up so you can get a full shot of him, blowing the kiss. He came over and I was like, Is he coming? I thought he was coming to the camera.
I thought he
when
was
turned
too.
around. I was
Watching
like,
it back
oh,
this
yes,
morning.
Come on.
My angle looked like
he's
he
gonna
was going
do
straight to your camera.
Yeah, and he did. He like
You
bumped
asked
into
him about
me.
it,
I'm
didn't
like,
you, Owen?
What's that?
You asked Kaleb about blowing the kisses, right?
Oh yeah, because it looked like he kind of turned around, and was like going back to the sideline, and then he like doubled back and kind of came over, and I again thought he was coming to me, but he like elbowed me out of the way, and then he wanted to go over to the fans and give him a big smooch.
See, we were spoiled because I think it was the Holiday Bowl. Zach Hanley had Amir Smith-Marset. I think it was on the sweep that he ran in for a score. Literally runs right up to Hanley's camera and gives him a thumbs up. And now every time a guy's coming towards us, I'm like, we're going to get another one of these. And that never happens.
There are times where somebody's, if somebody's scoring a touchdown in high school, college, whatever, and they're like coming right for me, I'll sometimes give them a little bit give him one of these.
Yes,
like, come on,
good,
give me something.
Good. Kaleb again, 17 for 134 and a score. Le'Shawn Williams, very quietly, 13 carries, 74 yards, without a run longer than 17. So he had a great game. If you take away the kneel downs and Deacon's sack and the high snap where he lost a big chunk of yards, 31 carries for Iowa's rushing attack for, I think I'm doing the math right here, 212 yards, which, again, even if you take the 67-yard route, that's a nice little clip. Again, the offensive line has really shown some stuff the last few weeks, especially now you get Kaleb back. Good to see the running attack opening up a little bit more.
Not to be the Debbie Downer of the bunch, but
There you go.
I think it needs to be asked, this offense, I don't think Purdue has a very good defense.
We talked about how good they were at sacks coming into this game, though.
Yeah,
And
I think they only had one.
Yeah.
But are you concerned that Iowa's offense couldn't just shut the door on the Boilermakers, or I feel like there are more points out there. Kirk even said so last night. 20 points against this Purdue team, like they did enough to win, and that's always the Iowa way.
Yeah.
But I think heading into especially next week, you have to be a little bit concerned that this offense can move. And
It was pointed out for certain contractual things that people have spoken about for 8 months now, that there was an opportunity to maybe score once more after that final fourth down stop in Purdue territory. Again, I think it comes down to a couple missed throws, maybe keep drives alive, and, things like that. So, yeah, there's probably a couple scoring drives left out there.
Another thing they took back, I took a step back from last week. There were 0 catches from receivers. I know Seth had, is that right? No, Seth had a catch. No, he had a carry.
Seth had a carry. It was Kaleb had a catch, and then the rest of the five.
Seth had a drop that would have been one, but not a lot of targets. And that's, I think Nico had a target.
Nico had a target.
Last
Lions
week
had a
there were
couple. Seth had a couple.
Maybe close to 10 targets to receivers, and
I think it was more than that.
yeah, I think it might have been like 13 or 14, but just a step back there. And I don't know if that was. Someone brought up a good point this year that when you have Eric All and back when you had Lachey, why not use those? People gave Kirk and Brian some criticism when they had Noah and TJ, and they didn't seem to target them as much as maybe some fans wanted to. So there's a little bit of that because Eric's a good receiver, but still a little concerning. And I don't know what to say else about that.
Eric's making some wide receiver plays out there yesterday too. I mean, that one down the middle is a thing of beauty. There's not many tight ends go up and get a ball like that, but Eric All certainly has that skill set. There is some, and we talked about this on Wednesday a little bit. Noah Shannon, you didn't scoff. You were taken aback by me saying 100% that he plays this year.
A high percent.
I have no reason not to double down on that now. It sounds more and more
200%
that there is a lot of confidence. It might happen earlier than we initially thought that Noah Shannon is going to play this year for the Iowa Hawkeyes. The NCAA announced a few days ago they're going to go reconsider the reinstatement guidelines for sports wagering. Again, Noah has been out for the year because betting on a team at the University of Iowa, not a football team, otherwise he'd lose all eligibility, placed some sort of wager that has him suspended for the season. Kirk, after the game, saying they've heard what we've all seen, and boy, things seem to be moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to say we have encouraging news, but I think we have encouraging news, so I'll verify that Tuesday. But at least, hopefully, I wish everything had happened sooner in this whole scenario. Yeah, and if the world were perfect, it would have. But it's any encouraging news is a good thing. So I'll know more Tuesday, but we're optimistic. Anytime you have a veteran guy, it's ironic. He's a 6-year guy. We had 3 6-year guys this year, and he's been out. So anytime you get a guy back with his experience and the quality of person he is, his leadership, that's always a plus. But I got to tell you, the bigger issue for me, not so much in May, but now as I've watched this whole thing unfold, to me the whole story is just the. When you have to explain to a player or his parents something that doesn't make sense, right? You compare this to that, and the player and the parent can look at a million examples that are more egregious, and then you look. That was a hard part, to make something that can't make sense, try to make sense. So, and then to watch him walk around feeling like he's done something wrong, which I understand. He understands he broke a rule, but. I mean, is that worth capital punishment? It's silly. And I think that's been the hardest thing for all of us.
Yeah, Kirk's maintained that from the beginning since we talked, I think, in August when he first revealed that it was a season-long suspension, that no crime was committed here. A rule was broken, certainly by Noah Shannon. He's acknowledged that. I mean, heck, he had the wherewithal to pull himself out of Big Ten media days because of his involvement. And a great parallel of explaining something that doesn't make sense. That's, boy, what a paradox that sounds like. We're supposed to learn more on Tuesday about Noah's situation, eligibility, whatever that may be. Sounds very encouraging. We talked on Wednesday that the NCAA had said they wanted to at least have things ready for a vote by the middle of October, by the end of October, voting on this. I get the sense this might be happening a heck of a lot quicker than that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we'd see Noah next week, but I could almost see like that, the Minnesota game, that home game the following week. Possibly we might see Noah Shannon out there on the field.
I wonder if by Tuesday, maybe this all gets figured out Tuesday, and he's back at practice this week.
Yeah,
gets not a full week of practice, but a few days. Still out for Wisconsin, and then he's got a little more preparation time heading to Minnesota. But listen, the damage has been done to a certain extent. He's missed 6 games of his 6th year that he came back for, had a shot to probably go pro and figure stuff out in the NFL. The fact that they are getting him back now, again, a month removed from thinking he wasn't going to come back at all, it's a weirdly bittersweet, feel-good story, because how awesome that roar for the Kinnick crowd when he comes out and everything, and boy, the player introduction. You think Tory Taylor gets a big cheer? Noah Shannon comeback game is going to hear a roar.
No one's getting higher than Tory.
My sister went to her first Hawkeye game in a while the other day. She goes, yesterday. And she texts me, she goes, why do they cheer when it's 4th down for Iowa? I'm like, let me tell you about Tory Taylor. She was a little taken aback by that. So I had to explain that to her. But it's still the bittersweetness of it probably shouldn't have ever been this situation where a dude is missing half of this year over a thing. Again, explaining to people something that doesn't make sense. But Noah Shannon, by all accounts, is more than likely going to get some games in 2023. And you can't be mad about that.
Yeah, I love to see it, and I wouldn't be surprised again to see him at some point be named a captain out there. Possibly there for the coin toss in midfield. I feel like there's enough respect in that locker room that he'd be that guy that might be out there. It's worth noting too, and I forget if maybe I just mentioned this to Mike yesterday, but somebody pointed out to me on Friday that, like, I don't know, I was chatting with somebody about just the upcoming wrestling season and, like, potential transfers or whatever. And I was like, oh man, yeah, but they're potentially going to be missing a lot of folks this season with some suspensions. But he was like, if the NCAA reverses their stuff, like, they might all be good to go, because tell me if I'm wrong. This is what he told me, and this guy knows wrestling. He was like, you can't gamble on wrestling? Or like,
as far as I know. I haven't gone too far down the rabbit hole, but
So these are not guys who would be gambling on their own team, obviously. No. So it's like all of those guys that were wrestlers that were potentially going to be missing this season, they're all coming back then.
I actually think there's one book, and I'm just having a memory of listening to the Iowa Everywhere pod, because they're with Circa Sports. I think they came up with a line for Iowa State specifically, but they don't do it I could be wrong on that, but I think they had that.
Yeah.
And they don't do that for every meet.
Right. Okay.
But again, we'll learn more on Tuesday, and certainly on social media and on Iowa's News Now. We'll get all those updates out there, and certainly we'll talk quite a bit about it in Wednesday's podcast, getting ready for Wisconsin. But speaking of spreads and lines and all things picks, again, this is the time of the podcast where I point out it was a terrible idea for us to base picks this year on spreads because we're not that great at it. But this is what we have after this past week. Nebraska and Illinois playing Friday. Boy, Illinois, man.
So disappointing.
We were
for
here
them.
Friday, and Kaysen Frericks, as we've established, is an Illini fan, and that young man is going through something here in 2023.
I thought they'd be so much better than they are.
Yeah.
And they did lose a lot to the NFL
They just
on
turn the ball.
defense.
They just turn the ball over, man. Altmaier is a great player, but 8 picks is that's a rough spot. Boy, Maryland looked like they were going to be the story of the weekend for a while there in Columbus. They ended up getting a push in a 20-point loss, but man, like I said, they get to host Michigan and Penn State in the back half of the year, and Maryland showed at least for a half in Columbus until more impressed with Ohio State getting things put together. And
Ohio State actually covered the actual spread at kickoff. It went down to 17, but when we did this on Wednesday, it was 20, just to note.
I mean, hats off to Howard. Keeping it within 3 against Northwestern.
That was shocking. Especially when they they went 10-10 at half against Penn State last week, and FCS Howard.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're good in FCS. Who knows? I'm not going to look into that.
They are not. I mean,
you're not going to just type Howard football into Google like I am right now to see what they've got. 2 and 3.
Yeah. I mean, they're a HBCU out of the DC area, and so it's like I think playing a conference that they don't even. Like the HBCU conferences don't even get a automatic spot in the playoffs for FCS. I mean,
that's true. Yep.
They're not regarded as great football programs.
They opened with a loss at Eastern Michigan in Ypsilanti, 33-23. Beat Morehouse College 65-19. Lost to Hampton 35-34. Beat Robert Morris 35-10, the alma mater of our Iowa's News Now colleague Kaylee Whitlatch. Sure. I believe Wale played football for Robert Morris. I'm a big Wale guy, man. Big Wale guy. And then they lose in Evanston to Northwestern.
But yeah, just again, Northwestern, boy, I mean, Iowa's going to be playing them in a few weeks right after the bye. Another team it's hard to make heads or tails of what this Northwestern team is. So Mitch finally having that good week that he needed.
Rutgers was happy to see that. I think that was an 11-point Badger win, correct?
Yep, 11 points.
That Rutgers team is who they are.
They scored a late touchdown, too. With 4 minutes left. Wisconsin was covering.
We'll take backdoors. Boy, I don't know how much you guys got to watch that Michigan-Minnesota game, but Kaleb Johnson throws a pick-6 first play, and things just got sideways real quick for the Gophers there. Michigan rolled. That's as good as Michigan's looked against one of the best teams they've played. Minnesota, when they have their game, they're kind of like Iowa in that sense. If they keep things kind of at their tempo and what they want to do, they can win those kind of ugly games in the trenches with the running game there is as good as anybody. But boy, when things get away, they can get away quick.
I think maybe I need to retire from any Minnesota picks from now on too, just like we're retiring from Illinois picks.
Are you 0 for Minnesota?
I mean, I feel like they've killed me. I'm relying on
man.
Mitch's knowledge too much.
Well, yeah, it's been rough. Well, Mike and I were talking about this before we started recording. So Cole Kramer's the backup quarterback for Minnesota, but he's played quite a bit since a freshman year. But he's been the Wildcat guy, so I don't know. Kaleb Johnson is probably the guy there, but kind of the same boat as Altmaier a little bit. 6 touchdown passes, but he's got 6 picks, and even going back to the opener against Nebraska, I believe that was a Thursday night on Fox. Just fires a little high, accuracy is a little bit of a thing, but that's and again, I think Minnesota's receiving core maybe. I can't remember if Brockington might be out still, but that's the Gopher situation. We'll worry about them next week. Right now, it'll be getting ready for that Wisconsin game. We'll get into final thoughts here just in a bit. I talked about this with Mike too. I wonder if Deacon talking about being jittery. Does he feel a little more comfortable for his first road start going to a place that he knows fairly well?
Yeah.
A little familiarity.
I would be a little worried, I guess, if I was an Iowa fan. Just, going back to Wisconsin, where those guys really are going to, the students are going to be, really letting them have it, and it's the jitters are not going to ease up at all come next week. So That would concern me potentially a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned for next week. I think coming into the season, though, if you're pegging 2 losses, maybe you'd pick Penn State and Wisconsin. So in that sense, maybe the pressure's off. That I guess the pressure to win the West, though, if this team wants to win the West, which they do, you're gonna have to beat Wisconsin because I believe they have no Big Ten losses as of right now.
2-0, 4-1 overall. Of course, the loss to Wazoo. So that's the road to the West is going to go through Wisconsin. Yep. I mean, it might not be completely decided next Saturday at Camp Randall, 3 o'clock on Fox 28, but a big swing of which way the West could go is probably going to be decided there at Camp Randall.
Largely, yeah. So I would be like, I would really love to see Deacon take a step in the good right direction, and another week of practice certainly can't hurt, just to get a little bit more comfortable with it.
And of course, Jazz Patterson might be back there. We were talking about maybe he just needed one more week after Purdue, and he comes back. It would be nice to have the full fleet of running backs healthy. Certainly, again, LeSean Williams, a really nice day behind an explosive day from Kaleb, but another week to maybe get healthy a little bit. You were missing Nick DeYoung on the offensive line yesterday as well. Connor Colby, I think he's been banged up a little bit. Mason Richmond was questionable, but he was out there. So you get another week to hopefully get DeYoung back, your most versatile lineman. And, you're going to need all hands on deck anytime you walk into, whether it's Barry Alvarez or Luke Fickle or whoever's coaching up there, Paul Christ. It's Wisconsin. It's a battle for the Heartland Trophy. You're going to need all your facilities and all your weapons with you for sure.
Yeah. We really did get a chance to see, I know, we were going to maybe this Wednesday recap some of our preseason picks and see how they're coming along. Kaleb Johnson, who at least I picked as my offensive MVP prior to the season. Boy, yesterday was really the game where you can see what this guy can do. I mean, he is so good and such a huge weapon on that offense. I mean, last week, boy, that rushing game was non-existent against Michigan State. And so just put Kaleb back in that role, and he can do a lot. And LeSean's a great, backup to him where he can come in and do some things. Just those two together, a great 1-2 punch. And again, if Jazz is in that mix as well, that running back room can be very dangerous if they're all healthy.
We'll see if
that's a game changer. I wouldn't want to know what the game was like if that 67-yard touchdown wasn't scored in the first quarter. Yep. You can little pressure off him, and jump out to that 10-0 lead. Probably could have been even larger lead, but still playing maybe at a 0-0 if Purdue scores, it's a whole different game, I think, a little bit.
Did we get any updates on Ostrenga? He was out as well, Addison Ostrenga.
I don't think anyone actually asked about him, which
that's true.
So I don't think so.
I'm guessing something happened during practice week or something like that.
Another thing, just as you mentioned Ostrenga, that maybe is a little bit of a concern of mine for the offense is that, when Lachey was healthy, they kind of knew, boy, we've got a couple of great tight ends here with Lachey and Eric all out there. I mean, after Lachey went down, it was kind of understood that Stylianos would be the number 2 tight end, and we have not really seen hardly anything out of him over the last 3 games since he came in as that number 2 guy.
He was the target on that one, that 3rd and goal play I was talking about where LeSean was out on the wheel. That's who Deacon was looking for.
Yeah.
Went a little too far with the ball, and again threw it pretty close to a Purdue defender. Could have made a pick, so I think maybe he's looking for him, but that's also, I don't know, maybe it takes a little while to find your number 2 tight end, at least in terms of targets and where you're going to look.
I wouldn't mind seeing a little philosophy change. Maybe take, I think Stylianos is a good backup, but, I still have confidence in Vines, Anderson, and Reganey. So Ragaini. So maybe put 3 receivers out there more. I know
They went 5 wide quite a few times too. So I think they're.
How much of it was All and Stylianos?
They went 5 wide, Mike.
I mean, All is basically.
Do you not want Iowa to use their tight ends? It's going to be part of the puzzle.
I like All being out there for all of the plays.
Again, between what he can do as a receiver, what he can do as a blocker, he's been everything you could have hoped for coming in from Ann Arbor. It's been nice to see, and we'll see what he does in a big rivalry game next week in Madison, the battle for the Heartland Trophy. Again, you can watch that on Fox 28. We'll break everything down with our Wednesday edition of Eye on the Hawks, going live Wednesday afternoon. But final quick thoughts as we play the outro music. Anything you guys want to look forward to quick?
You think Jesus knew that dinosaurs existed? No. Yesterday was a chance that we were going to talk about what's the identity of this Iowa team and who are they going to be moving forward. I still don't know if I have a good look, but I think that they looked impressive enough that the defense, you're starting to grow a lot more confident in the defense.
It's going to be a tough one in Camp Randall. I I don't have a lot of faith in the offense, but the defense I think will keep us in there.
All right, well, we'll jump to some conclusions before we jump around to Madison on Wednesday with Eye on the Hawks. For Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. We'll see you on Wednesday as we get ready for the battle for the Harlan Trophy.